I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, so on and so forth. I have two questions to start out today. What does it mean to be righteous? What does it mean to be righteous? In other words, how are we to live before God and others? Think about that as we move through the sermon. The story of the Old Testament begins with Israel returning to Judah after Babylonian captivity or exile. The Israelites had faced enormous losses. They were in spiritual confusion. Losses of culture, losses of religion, loss of some families. They were devastated. The temple had been destroyed. God's favor was lost as well. And they must have wondered, what did we do wrong? We were in captivity. How can we win our way back to God? Could be something like that when we suffer significant losses. Loss of a loved one, loss of home, loss of homeland, loss of job. Aren't we like that in some respects? And in my experience working with people who are in grief, some of them, of course, rev up their attendance in the church. They want to go to church more often. Maybe that'll do it. They want to pray more, so they pray morning, noon, and night. They ask God for things. Do more service work so we can forget about the loss and the grief. But the prophet Isaiah lays out a different path for the Israelis and for us who have been created in the image of God. God does not want self-deprivation. He does not want us to suffer for the sake of suffering. Rather, God has created us to love. He wants us to live life at its fullest. He wants us to know joy, communion with others and with Him. And then the caveat, not a caveat, but and to love justice. Isaiah talks a lot about justice today. What God wants from us is very clear. The prophet Isaiah outlines it. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry? Bring the homeless poor into your house. When you see the naked, cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. I think as I read that this last week, Isaiah is beginning to warm us up for Lent. Lent is it Lent already? Yes. What, 2, 3 weeks? 3 weeks? We're getting into Lent. Ash Wednesday. We'll do all kinds of things. We'll fast. Wrong reasons, of course. We'll fast because we're too fat, because we're on a diet, and all those kind of good things. Isaiah doesn't talk about those things. Isaiah gives us a blistering to get ready for the fast days in a much different way. Isaiah is spurred to speak by the comments or the complaints about God's perceived inattentiveness to the Israelites. And human nature hasn't changed very much throughout the years, has it? In other words, when something is wrong, when we do not get our own way, what do? We deny. It's not my fault. It's not my fault that the economy is in the tank. It's not my fault about health insurance. It's not my fault about this. We point to others. the president of Congress, the pastor maybe in the church, or whatever. We point the fingers. We blame someone else. I didn't vote that way, so I'm not going to abide by that. Then we get around to blaming God for not listening to us. And so our knee-jerk reaction is to assume that someone else is at fault for our disappointments. I know because I've done it. How do we square some of our worst behavior with God's stated desires? That we loosen the bonds of injustice. We undo the thongs of the yoke. We let the oppressed go free and break every yoke. And this is different from the scribes and the Pharisees. They were the righteous because they felt we do everything right. And so, before protesting too much, when we say we're not at fault, I think we need to consider a few things. We need to consider our treatment of people who dress differently than we do, people who talk differently than we do, and people who fall in love differently than we do. We've got to consider the subservient attitude we as a society demand from those who are indentured because they want to provide for their families. I think we must consider that we who are immigrants, yes, you and I are immigrants in this land we call America. And those of us who have no stomach for immigration laws. Consider our blindness towards the plight of our young and the scared who are wrongly arrested and have no access to competent legal services. Put them in jail at first. Our jails are filled. They're overflowing with people who shouldn't be there. Consider the chains that we allow to bind those who work long hours, 12 hours a day in minimum wage jobs. And consider those who live in substandard housing, those who eat from the boxes of cereal we get from our churches. Consider those who have no choice but to send their children to schools that we wouldn't even visit. There's a Japanese legend about a pious Buddhist monk who died and went to heaven, and he's taken on a sightseeing tour. And there, as he sees all of the wonderful temples made out of marble and stone and gold, until all of a sudden they come to a room which looks like a merchant shop, and lining those walls were things that looked like dried up mushrooms. And then they get a little closer, and upon closer examination, he saw that they were human ears. Human ears. Gesundheit. That's a German word, by the way. Bless you. And so the guide explains to the monk, these are the ears of people who went to temple diligently. And they listened diligently to the teaching. But they did nothing about what they heard. And after death, they themselves went someplace else, but their ears made it to heaven. It's a nice story. Nice spiritual story, in fact. But the painful truth is that sometimes we church people, to be mostly ears at times, substituting hearing for doing. And so Isaiah's words, yes, they were written long ago, long ago, but they ring true today. And the questions that I would like you to think about: who amongst us is righteous? Who amongst us is righteous? What is the fast that God chooses for you? 3, what chains are we to break? What chains are we to break? And as you begin to answer those questions, remember that you can be the salt of the earth, and you can be the light of this community and the world.